Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta. Today we will discuss the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch Master Huineng. In the Han tradition of Buddhism, this is an extremely profound teaching method. Through the Sixth Patriarch's teaching method, countless accomplished masters and practitioners in the history of Chan Buddhism have attained enlightenment. This time, it is also due to an auspicious connection that everyone has great interest in the Platform Sutra. Although I personally do not have a direct lineage transmission, I developed great interest after initially encountering this teaching method. Therefore, I believe it is an excellent opportunity for us to study together. What we are now teaching is from the second section, the Prajna section. There is some prose text at the beginning which we will discuss today. If there were no people in the world, all phenomena would originally not exist. Therefore, know that all phenomena originally arise from people. All scriptures exist because of people. In this passage, the Sixth Patriarch addresses his followers with the term spiritual friends. As we mentioned before, generally when we address people, we lack respect and reverence. Especially some people with relatively low levels of cultural cultivation in the way they address others, one can discover their extremely low personal cultivation. Using insulting, discriminatory, or contemptuous forms of address toward others does not accord with the principles of Mahayana Buddhism. The true principles of Mahayana Buddhism, as taught in texts like the Way of the Bodhisattva, show that people with altruistic minds address and respect others differently. Here the Sixth Patriarch says, spiritual friends, all the sutras. Sutra is a Sanskrit term meaning all scriptures and discourses, and all texts that express the meaning within the scriptures, whether Mahayana or Hinayana, including within Mahayana the verses, causes and conditions, self-spoken teachings, and so on. Altogether, the 12 divisions of scripture are all established in accordance with people. All Dharma texts, in terms of written words and external material forms, do not truly exist. They should be established according to the different wisdom of each person. How are they established? Because the wisdom, faculties, inclinations, and interests of each sentient being are all different. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in different environments and at different times, in order to match the faculties of sentient beings, have taught the scriptures according to their capacities. The Buddhist sutras teach this, and the treatises also teach this. On the surface, all the teachings in the 3 baskets and 12 divisions of scripture in Buddhism are established for the different faculties of sentient beings. Speaking in terms of true nature, the Buddha actually never taught any real dharma. For example, in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it is taught, all the Tathagatas have not spoken the Buddha Dharma, but teach the Dharma according to what accords with those to be transformed. Because the faculties of sentient beings differ, the Buddha manifestly taught 84,000 Dharma gates. But speaking of true nature, the Buddha never actually taught anything. Not only did Shakyamuni Buddha not teach, the Buddhas of the 3 times have never taught a single Dharma. Therefore, we should understand here that actually all Dharma texts are established according to the faculties of sentient beings. Why do we say this? As we mentioned before, all teachings, including the Diamond Sutra and other treatises, actually the content taught in the scriptures should already exist within us sentient beings. If we ourselves do not have it, no matter how excellent the scripture, there will be certain difficulties for the wisdom in the scripture to enter your mind stream. We often speak of the prajna of words and the prajna of meaning. True prajna of meaning is actually our inherent Buddha nature. If there is no Buddha nature within our inherent nature, no matter how excellent the prajna of words is, accomplishment will be very difficult. Not only in Buddhism, but even in modern secular education, we can see this. For example, a person's entire knowledge from elementary school through university, on the surface it seems the teacher taught its knowledge from textbooks, but whether each student can accept the knowledge in these textbooks, if they can accept it, they themselves must have this innate capacity. If they themselves lack this capacity, no matter how good the material in the textbook, there is no way. It's like a stone. No matter how good the material in the textbook is, if you irrigate it, it cannot accept it. So not only Buddhist knowledge, but worldly knowledge as well, one's own mind is most important. As I mentioned a few days ago, actually each of us, regarding worldly wisdom, has the conditions to develop it, a kind of potential that can be developed. For example, I can study crafts, I can study medicine, I can study various languages and scripts of the world, including their living traditions. Actually, I should have this capacity. It's just that I don't have the environment, the conditions, or the teachers. Therefore, I don't understand this or that. If the various conditions were present, I could also do it. But what is the key point? My own wisdom is very important. If I don't have this potential in my wisdom, then no matter how complete the external conditions, it cannot be realized. Similarly, regarding each sentient being's own enlightenment, everyone must understand, do we need Dharma texts? Certainly we need to rely on this condition. Do we need teachers and masters? Certainly we do. But what is most fundamental? It is our own mind. Our own mind manifestly has conceptual thoughts and is bound by various kinds of ignorance and afflictions, but actually it has this capacity to be developed and opened. It's like a treasure trove. On the surface, it just looks like a mountain, but inside this mountain there is gold, silver, and various treasures. If we dig up these treasures, there can be an inexhaustible Dharma treasury. Similarly, each of us, on the surface, manifestly, may be a bit dull or a bit clever with various differences. Because some people in this life encounter spiritual teachers, some do not. Some in past lives encountered spiritual teachers, some did not. Various situations. Actually, we as Buddhists should now understand these principles. Outside, we often encounter some Buddhists who, to be honest, are quite superstitious. Perhaps they don't understand even 1/10,000th or 100 millionth of Buddhism. They merely regard certain behaviors as the entire content of Buddhism. They themselves are immersed in such behaviors and represent themselves as Buddhists. Perhaps many intellectuals outside would not really acknowledge this. Why is it that nowadays Buddhism is acknowledged by so many intellectuals and scholars around the world? Buddhism can fully keep pace with the world and with any modern science and era. On this point, the spirit and content of Buddhism absolutely need not have any concerns. But what is worrying is that we Buddhists don't understand. If we ourselves don't understand, there's no way. Therefore, at this time, we must understand that all scriptures and teachings are established according to people's different faculties. If there were no people in the world, all phenomena would originally not exist. If there were no people and sentient beings in our world, all the 12 divisions of scripture and all the Dharma would originally be impossible to exist. Therefore, we should know that all the teaching Dharma and realization Dharma in the world, especially the teaching Dharma gates, are all established in dependence upon people. All scriptures are spoken because of people. When spoken because of people, various paths can be established. If people's faculties and people's conceptual thoughts did not exist, there would be no way to expound. As the Lotus Sutra also teaches, the characteristics of all phenomena are quiescent cessation and cannot be expressed in words. All phenomena are originally quiescent characteristics and cannot possibly be expressed in words. Speaking truly from the Dharma nature, from the content of all phenomena, from the Buddha's enlightenment to his final nirvana, actually not a single word can be said to have been spoken. Not speaking should be the most ultimate, the most supreme. It's just that because people's faculties differ, some Dharma gates have been established. So, speaking ultimately, not speaking is most reasonable. Previously, in Chan Buddhism history, there was a master called the Silent Meditation Master. Through a method that couldn't be expressed in words, this kind of indication, he enabled his disciples below to gain some enlightenment. There is such an account, but whether this is true history or a story, I'm also not very clear. The Silent Meditation Master, I think I've taught about this before, was a very remarkable master, but usually manifestly he was not particularly good at expressing himself. In the process of communicating with his disciples and others, often there was an able disciple of his who communicated with others. Once when his disciple went out, his followers came and started asking questions. The first question asked the master, "What is Buddha?" He became rather anxious, looked left, looked right, and didn't say anything. Then that disciple immediately asked, "Then what is Dharma?" At this time, the Silent Meditation Master looked up, looked down, and also didn't answer, then immediately asked, "What is Sangha?" The last of the three questions. He had no way, so he just spread out both hands, meaning I have no way to answer. As a result, that disciple left extremely joyfully and delightedly. After a while, the silent meditation master's own disciple came back. Manifestly, he told him, "How could you go out? Today, someone came asking me questions, very troublesome, but they left very happily." The disciple asked, "How did you answer?" He then explained the situation. First, when he asked about Buddha, "I wanted to find you." Looked left, looked right to have you answer, but couldn't find you. But actually at that time, that Buddhist understood the master's looking left, looking right, not saying anything. Oh, left and right, everything is the Dharmakaya. The so-called Buddha should mean the Dharmakaya pervading everything. He understood this principle. The second question, when asked about Dharma, he looked up, looked down. He had no way to answer. Looking up, this is very troublesome, how to answer. At this time, that disciple understood, all phenomena are equal. There is no high or low. The third question, after being asked so many questions, he had no way, so he told him to go back. At this time, that disciple understood that the true ordained Sangha members make propagating the Dharma their household duty and benefiting beings their career. He already understood this. Later, that person became enlightened. His disciple said, "You truly are the remarkable silent meditation master. Your answers were all a way of indicating to others." Actually, in true Buddhism, especially in our Vajrayana, there are many methods that cannot be expressed in words, and these should be the most profound. The ultimate secret meaning of Chan Buddhism, not establishing written words, is also like this. Therefore, sometimes we say to understand through written words, sometimes we say written words are not needed. But these two truly do not contradict each other. Different levels have different meanings. Therefore, here it says that manifestly speaking, all Dharma texts and treatises are established according to the different faculties of each sentient being. But actually, there is nothing that can be established in written words. It should be said this way. Speaking manifestly, among people, there are also different kinds of people. According to these people, some are foolish, some are wise. The foolish are petty people, the wise are great people. The foolish ask the wise, and the wise teach the Dharma to the foolish. When the foolish suddenly awaken and open their minds, they are no different from the wise. The Sixth Patriarch says that among people there are two types. Some possess extremely high wisdom, and some people are particularly dull. As for dull people, they are called people of small capacity because they don't understand truth and principles and lack good qualities and virtues, bad faults, jealousy, anger, greed. All the bad characteristics are complete. In our world, these are called petty people. There is also another type with wisdom, compassion, and faith. These are called people of great capacity, also referred to as great people. Generally speaking, the foolish often ask the wise, and the wise expound the true Dharma for the foolish. This is also true in our world. Some people may be manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas disguised as foolish people. Some people, truly because the karma they've created since beginningless time is quite severe, must listen to and receive the true Dharma before others. So this is called the foolish listening to the true Dharma before the wise expounding the Buddha Dharma to the foolish. In this process of exchange, often the foolish, these petty people, suddenly become enlightened through the wise one's teachings. At this time, there is no difference from the wise. Generally speaking, many disciples receive Buddhist education before their lineage masters. Wisdom also emerges in different environments. It has been this way throughout history. Therefore, our academy has always required everyone, no matter what the situation, to truly engage in listening and contemplating. Of course, on the surface, some may not necessarily all be foolish people. But some people have great interest in listening to the Dharma, so their worldly and transcendent level and wisdom should be quite high. But manifestly, they often attend classes before others and often study. I think this is very necessary. On the surface, it seems like I am studying before others. From a worldly perspective, I become the student, they become the teacher. Might there be some unfair conceptual thoughts? But actually, when we listen to teachings before others, in this process, we can cultivate our own virtuous mind and wisdom. I hope that whether we are Buddhists or non-Buddhists, currently in society things are very complex, and many people's minds are also very confused. At this time, we rely on the teachings of spiritual teachers, especially many Dharma friends ordinarily listen to teachings before different Dharma teachers. This is very necessary. In this process, perhaps at the beginning it seems, if I study alone, might that be better? temporarily looking, perhaps occasionally this may be so, but in the long term, collective study and individual study are completely different. Personally speaking, I also have a very deep experience with this. Everyone should listen to the Buddha Dharma, even if you pretend to be foolish, pretend to be a petty person, and listen before others. This is also a very important matter. Open the window a bit. It's so hot. Is it open over there? It's snowing heavily outside, right? Spiritual friends, without awakening, Buddha is sentient beings. In one thought of awakening, sentient beings are Buddha. Therefore know that all phenomena are entirely within one's own mind. Why not suddenly see the true nature from within your mind? The Bodhisattva Precepts Sutra says, I am originally pure in self-nature. If one recognizes one's own mind and sees one's nature, all attain the Buddha path. The Vimalakirti Sutra says, immediately and suddenly one regains one's original mind. The Sixth Patriarch says, spiritual friends, if we have not awakened to the essence of our own mind, although every sentient being originally has Buddha nature and Tathagata essence, still there is no way. Manifestly, we are deluded sentient beings. Once, in the process of observing our own mind, we have awakened, having recognized the true nature of mind, although we are sentient beings, actually the Buddha's wisdom has already manifested. So we should know that all phenomena are entirely within one's own mind. The most crucial thing is that all phenomena look to one's own mind. Why? From within one's own mind, this true nature can be developed. For each of us, actually practice is truly very important. Among many Dharma friends present, some particularly like theoretical research. This is also quite important, especially when young extensive learning is very important. But most importantly, each person should not become someone with extremely heavy conceptual thoughts. The more you study and contemplate, eventually it seems you don't accept this or that. Everything is viewed with a rejecting or slandering perspective. Now, some teachers in universities and academic circles are like this. In their own minds, they never practice. They also don't know what kind of Tathagata essence, what treasure they have. But every day, they constantly speak of others' faults. This is unnecessary. For each of us, the most crucial thing is a kind of awakening taught in Buddhism. This awakening also includes great awakening and small awakening. Each person can have different degrees of awakening capacity, including in our mind streams. Previously, we had no concept at all of life's impermanence, but after later studying Mahayana Buddhism, everything is impermanent. If you contemplate impermanence very well, eventually when you yourself get sick or encounter suffering in life, you can completely face it. This is also a kind of awakening capacity. So-called awakening doesn't necessarily mean leaving no body behind, all becoming like non-abiding arhats. Not necessarily. Nor is it necessarily like in tantric teachings, rainbow body attainment, leaving not even hair or nails behind. Not necessarily. Each person's awakening capacity is different. If we have some awakening capacity, although we are sentient beings, actually we can also become awakened beings. If we lack awakening capacity, on the surface you yourself think you're a great accomplished master and so on, but actually you're not truly an awakened being. Therefore, true awakening is actually right here under our words. The Buddha in the Tathagata Garbha Sutra also said, with the Buddha eye, I see that in the bodies of all sentient beings, the Buddha treasury peacefully abides. Through teaching, I cause it to be revealed. The Tathagata essence originally already peacefully abides. Through teaching, it can be revealed and developed, just like in our mundane world, when some treasure trove, developers and prospectors have already discovered it. After discovering it, then many impoverished people can solve various life problems. Therefore, what we teach here, in tantric teachings, it's also taught this way. The most crucial is one's own mind. One's own mind should at all times be attended to with mindfulness and vigilance. At the same time, there are many methods for observing the mind. Whether Chan meditation, mantra recitation, or ordinary contemplation, these are all methods for observing the mind. Therefore, in the process of listening and contemplating, everyone should still habitually, upon waking in the morning, also abide for a while, observe this mind of yours. Before going to bed at night, you should also practice meditation. Ordinarily, when you yourself have a bit of free time, at this time also observe your own mind. When you often observe your own mind like this, eventually you gain some recognition of the mind. Gradually, craving, aversion, and ignorance are not the original face. The true nature of appearance, emptiness, inseparability, this is the mind's original face. This is the true reality of the world. At that time, as taught in our tantric tradition, the most profound original purity and spontaneous presence, the mind nature where luminosity and emptiness are inseparable, can be developed. Here it teaches from the Bodhisattva Precepts Sutra. The Bodhisattva Precepts Sutra was previously translated by Kumarajiva, 2 sections from the Brahmajala Sutra. But today when I looked, I didn't find this exact passage. It should be there. Perhaps I myself, in the Bodhisattva Precepts Sutra, it teaches this way. I am originally pure in self-nature. If one recognizes one's own mind and sees one's nature, all attain the Buddha path. If we recognize our own original face, see our nature, then we can attain the Buddha path. In Vajrayana, this is also the most profound view. In Vajrayana, we go through empowerment, we practice the preliminaries, and finally, when teaching the main practice, self-nature is originally pure. Ground, path, and fruition are inseparable. In the Mahayana Sutras, there is actually the same teaching. The nature of all sentient beings' minds is pure and stainless like space. I really like this scriptural citation. If you often recite this scriptural citation, sometimes you become rather joyful, because the nature of every sentient being's mind is originally pure and stainless, just like space. But regarding this space, when we use it as a metaphor, omniscient Longchenpa, in his Treasury of the Dharma realm, also taught, when we use a metaphor, we cannot merely use empty nothingness as a metaphor. It's not like that. It should be that our minds are originally pure, without any elaboration, without any miscellaneous thoughts of craving, aversion, and ignorance. Like pure space without any obstruction, every sentient being's mind is like this. However, many of us don't understand this principle. Therefore, in the mind, it's like tying space into knots. The mind is originally like space. But because we don't understand this principle, many sentient beings are distressed about this matter, troubled about that matter. Worldly sentient beings are truly also very pitiful, especially when we encounter unsurpassed tantric teachings. Only then do we know that truly every sentient being's mind is so pure, so luminous, so free from all dust. People who have some practice in this aspect will understand. Therefore, we encounter such great dharma. I hope everyone at least obtains some portion for themselves. Otherwise, it would be very regrettable. It's like what people say in the world. For example, if you go to the jewel continent but don't bring back a wish-fulfilling jewel, if you bring back a similar-looking jewel, people will ridicule you. Similarly, we have obtained such a hard-to-obtain human birth, especially encountering the most profound essential teachings of Mahayana Sutra and Tantra. Our own minds have no recognition at all, or even if we recognize slightly, but you don't continue to practice. And finally, when leaving, you're still just a very ordinary afflicted sentient being and lose this opportunity. This would also be a laughable matter for worldly people. When you have time, please also look in the Bodhisattva Precepts Sutra. The content may be there, but I haven't found the original text. There is also the Pure Name Sutra, which is the Vimalakirti Sutra. This sutra contains it. At that time, the Buddha dispatched 10 disciples, among them Venerable Purna. When he was teaching the principles to some bhikshus, Vimalakirti, the lay practitioner, asked them to rest in equanimity. In the end, they suddenly awakened and were able to recognize their true nature. There is such a passage, the Vimalakirti Sutra, or the Immaculate Reputation Sutra. We also have this sutra in Tibetan called the Immaculate Reputation Sutra. Immaculate Reputation is the name of Vimalakirti, the lay practitioner. Actually, here, when we previously taught the Great Net of Illusion, we also mentioned this. The principle of primordial purity is explained extensively. Therefore, in the Chan tradition, they cite the Bodhisattva Precept Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra. The essence of our mind is inherently pure at this very moment. If one truly looks back at oneself and examines the mind inwardly, recognizing it, one can have such awakening. Therefore, this does not distinguish between male and female, nor between noble and humble. For any person, If you truly rely on the Guru's pith instructions and look back at your own mind, you should know that in our lives the nature of many unpleasant afflictions can all completely vanish without a trace. Moreover, the true original face of one's own mind, the state of luminosity and emptiness, cannot be altered. What we alter is the defilements of attachment, aversion, and delusion. That is not the true mind, just like clouds and mist in the sky. The clouds and mist are not the sky itself. The mind that is the indivisible union of emptiness and luminosity cannot be altered by anyone. This is the original face of the mind. It is the nature of liberation itself. So regarding these matters, if we use conceptual thinking and worldly language to explain them, then the awakened states of great masters throughout history, if we explain them a little with words, it is also possible to speak of them. It is not as non-Buddhists say that our realization is inconceivable. And besides being inconceivable, nothing can approach it. It is not like that. The awakening in our Buddhist tradition, as long as you are an impartial person, as long as you are truly a reasonable person, just observe your own mind. See whether what is taught in the Chan and Tantric traditions is correct or not. We say that afflictions are not the true state of mind because afflictions, through observation, for example, if I generate anger, actually this anger is not the true original face of my mind. Through observation, we can also articulate this principle. Then through my resting in equanimity, originally when I generated anger, my mind was extremely uncomfortable. In the Buddhist sutras, it is said that when anger arises, it temporarily makes that sentient being's state of mind completely lose composure. This is also correct. Some people, at the very moment of generating anger, seem to do many unwise things. Now, when many families quarrel, driven by anger, everything in the house that can be smashed gets smashed like this. This kind of habit, nowadays some people often have it. Actually, at that moment, it is Mara shooting arrows at others. The arrow of anger is also called the arrow of mindlessness, because when you generate anger, you have completely lost composure, no longer having your original normal mind. After a while, when the mind has recovered, at that moment when you look, your bowls are also smashed. Everything that could be broken has already been shattered. At that time, there is much regret and embarrassment, but there is no remedy. But this state of mind is actually not the true original face of sentient beings' minds. There are two approaches to recognizing this. One is to observe through wisdom, and one is through resting in equanimity. At this time, one will discover, actually, many of our sentient beings' afflicted states of mind are actually unreasonable, irrational. The non-afflicted state of mind that recognizes the nature of luminosity is something every sentient being has. It is just that only those with merit will understand it. Those without merit, even if they encounter these teachings, will not comprehend them. This is what we just discussed from the teachings in the Vimalakirti Sutra. Good friends, when I was with the Fifth Patriarch, upon hearing his words, I immediately awakened and suddenly saw the true nature of reality. Therefore, I spread this teaching method so that the Dharma learners may suddenly awaken to Bodhi, each observing their own mind and seeing their own nature. The Sixth Patriarch told the good friends, I once was in the presence of the Fifth Patriarch, the great master Hongren, and heard these pith instructions, primarily the Diamond Sutra. When I heard his words, I immediately awakened at that moment. At that time, the Fifth Patriarch told him, if you do not recognize your original mind, studying the Dharma is of no benefit. Later, after he recognized his original mind, the primordial purity of his own mind, non-abiding, non-attachment, and so forth, he had suddenly seen the principle of the primordial purity of the mind. After he truly awakened, he did not just stay in a mountain cave. Later, he continuously propagated the Buddha Dharma. In the future, this teaching method, the Chan teachings of the Fifth Patriarch, would be spread throughout the world. Actually, spreading it throughout the world, this principle is also very important. Just as the record of the Source Mirror also explains, this virtuous mind of propagating the teachings can repay the kindness of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. I think this is very important. Many Dharma friends here among us. How vast each person's work of spreading the Dharma truly is may be difficult to determine. Some people's activities of spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings are very extensive, while others may not be. But in our hearts, the Dharma methods I have obtained should be widely spread throughout the world. This kind of aspiration is very important. If one has such aspiration, one can repay the kindness of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and also repay the kindness of the lineage masters. Previously, in my song Missing the Guru, this is also what I thought in my heart. For example, if I want to repay the Guru's kindness, not to mention this lifetime, even for countless lifetimes, there is no way. Even 1/10,000th of it is impossible for me to repay. But the only method of repayment is to benefit sentient beings as much as possible. Therefore, as explained in the record of the Source Mirror, the virtuous aspiration to propagate the teachings, when such a thought arises, one moment of such virtue, one moment of such virtuous mind, actually can repay the kindness of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. This is very important. I also hope that all of us here frequently generate the aspiration, I want to spread the Buddha Dharma, I want to benefit sentient beings. We should think this way. Otherwise, nowadays, some Buddhists, when they have a little capability in this regard, think about how to eat well, how to live well, how to enjoy themselves. If they are of middling capacity, they think about how to attain liberation. Actually, anything with a component of self may not necessarily be very good. Including my liberation, of course it is slightly better than those who do not seek liberation. But compared with the Bodhisattva's altruistic mind, it does not have much great value. Spreading such Buddha Dharma throughout the world and enabling the Dharma learners to suddenly awaken to Bodhi through each one's method of contemplative practice, the method of observing one's own mind, to recognize the original face of one's own mind. If you cannot awaken by yourself, you need to seek a great spiritual guide. One who can explain the Supreme Vehicle Dharma and directly point out the right path. If you have not recognized your own mind, originally each of us has our own conditions and circumstances for awakening. But if you do not have them, you need to seek a great spiritual guide. Through a great spiritual guide, what can they do? They can explain all the most supreme Dharma and point out the correct path. Spiritual guides in Buddhism are also extremely important. If there are no spiritual guides, although our minds possess Buddha nature and all virtues, without the spiritual guide's instruction, it is indeed very difficult to understand. The Avatamsaka Sutra also says, even if the wise cannot comprehend the Dharma without someone to explain it, if the Dharma has no one to explain it, even if you are very wise, it is impossible to understand some of its ultimate hidden meanings. Therefore, since ancient times, spiritual guides should be extremely important. Including in the Vinaya and some sutras, in the dialogue between the Buddha and Ananda, it is also explained this way. At first, Ananda said that spiritual guides are very important. In our Dharma, half depends on spiritual guides. Later, the Buddha, in his manifest way, did not agree. The Dharma does not depend on spiritual guides for just half. The Dharma entirely depends on spiritual guides. What does this mean? If we do not rely on the guidance of a spiritual guide, indeed, we will not understand. Many of us in our own lives can discover this. Originally, if a guru had not come to teach the sutra, perhaps even if you read it 10 times or 20 times yourself, you may not understand. Now, many teachers think their own wisdom is quite good. I have already read this book. When asked some questions from it, no matter how many times you have read it, actually you have not understood at all. Because they lack the pith instructions. Without pith instructions, it is probably difficult to understand. For example, if we have never studied and contemplated the two truths of the middle way, on the surface, you can speak of conventional truth, ultimate truth, and so forth. But you do not know what conventional truth really is, what ultimate truth is like. If there is no instruction from a spiritual guide, we just superficially look at the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, where it speaks of primordial purity. We might think of it as something very clean or very pure. There would be no genuine guidance for you on the path of realization. So this is also quite important. Here it speaks of all spiritual guides as those who should point out the correct path. It is because the spiritual guide has great conditions that they can guide and enable one to see one's nature. All wholesome dharmas arise because spiritual guides can give rise to them. All Buddhas of the 3 times and the 12 divisions of scriptures are inherently possessed within human nature. Here it explains that spiritual guides in our Buddhist tradition, as we just mentioned, represent an extremely great condition. What kind of condition is a spiritual guide? What is their main responsibility? It is to liberate sentient beings and enable these sentient beings to see their nature. This is most important. It is not that spiritual guides do other things, speaking some pleasant words to you, arranging accommodations for you, taking care of your various aspects. These are not very important. At that time, Milarepa also first said to Marpa-Lotsawa, my dharma, my accommodations, my livelihood, all of these should be taken care of by you. Marpa-Lotsawa said, either I give you the dharma and you arrange your own accommodations and food, or I can arrange your accommodations and food for you, your livelihood, but you seek the dharma somewhere else. Milarepa thought about it. No, I came here not specifically to enjoy comforts. I will arrange my own livelihood and accommodations and have the guru transmit the dharma to me. At first, Marpa-Lotsawa agreed very readily, but later, in order to examine his character, he went back on his word midway. Gradually, after Milarepa purified much of his negative karma, only then could he receive the transmission. So nowadays, in the process of many people seeking a guru, many people think that when a spiritual guide provides them with accommodations, wow, they are extremely happy. My guru is especially good. Why? Because they arranged accommodations for me. This guru is so compassionate. So if one has accommodations, this is the guru's compassion. Of course, perhaps this is also a kind of condition, an auspicious connection, a way of expressing care. But the most fundamental thing is to realize the mind and see one's nature, to recognize the nature of one's own mind. If by relying on a spiritual guide, you truly practice wholesome dharmas and can understand the principles of what to adopt and what to abandon, this is the spiritual guide's most important responsibility. If the spiritual guide does not fulfill this aspect, perhaps in the worldly sense as well, for example, our ordinary literacy and recitation, the so-called accommodations, or going to Tibetan areas to see some scenic spots, taking some landscape photos, having your picture taken with them, a spiritual guide can do this, but other people can also do it. It is not the most fundamental. When we rely on a spiritual guide, I find that some people have no idea at all what profession a spiritual guide has. What kind of person can be called a spiritual guide? In these aspects, one should understand. As for spiritual guides, they must be responsible for their related Dharma friends and disciples. There must be some teachings regarding recognizing the nature of the mind. This is extremely important. All wholesome dharmas arise because spiritual guides can give rise to them, because the most fundamental is our mind. But on the basis of the most fundamental mind, is a spiritual guide's guidance needed? This is also needed. Without a spiritual guide's guidance, we may not understand that our mind is the foundation of all phenomena and all liberation. All Buddhas of the 3 times and the 12 divisions of scriptures are inherently possessed within human nature. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, as well as all the 12 divisions of scriptures, are all possessed within our Buddha nature. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, actually our mind can contain them. When we recognize our own mind, whether Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha, all external conditions can arise from this. The Avatamsaka Sutra also explains, if anyone wishes to know all the Buddhas of the 3 times, they should contemplate thus: mind creates all Tathagatas. All the Buddhas of the 3 times are actually attained through reliance on the mind. If we do not acknowledge the mind, if we say our mind is not the foundation of all phenomena, then to seek a spiritual guide somewhere else, to seek true awakening somewhere else, this is extremely difficult. Therefore, what we say here is that all Buddhas of the 3 times and the 12 divisions of scriptures are all possessed within the human mind. We ourselves inherently possess them. This is very important. If you do not understand this and seek the Buddha externally or seek the Dharma from outside, of course, this is not the most ultimate practice. If you cannot awaken by yourself, you must seek a spiritual guide to point the way before you can see. If you can awaken yourself, there is no need to seek externally. If you have not recognized the nature of the mind and then seek this, originally you yourself possess Buddha nature or this awareness. At this time you inherently possess it. But if you do not develop what you inherently possess, you can seek a spiritual guide. For example, originally where I live there is a treasure, but I myself do not know exactly where it is. You specifically find a prospector to develop it. They can explore where it is located here. This is acceptable. But if you discover that you do not originally possess it, then no matter how many prospectors you hire, it is of no use. If you can truly awaken by yourself, then there is no need to rely on external things, including Dharma texts and spiritual guides. You can do without them. But this is indeed somewhat difficult, because at the beginning, each of us sentient beings has been wandering in samsara for far too long. To self-awaken completely like the Pratyeka Buddhas or the great masters of the past, there is some difficulty. At the beginning, the guidance of a spiritual guide is indispensable, I think. This is very important. But in the process of seeking, we must understand that our own mind is the source of all liberation, the wellspring of all accomplishment. If one persists in holding that liberation must be obtained through reliance on another spiritual guide, this is impossible. If we do not acknowledge that our own mind has the conditions for liberation, the best conditions, and instead persistently cling to the hope that a spiritual guide will liberate us, then this is impossible. It cannot be. The Buddha also said, "I proclaim the path of liberation to you, but liberation depends on yourself. All liberation actually depends on oneself." Patrul Rinpoche also explained in words of my perfect teacher, "It is impossible for the Guru to throw you like a stone into the Pure Land. At a certain point, the Guru can only give you instructions. Those with karmic connections, through the Guru's instructions, will themselves understand and comprehend the principles." Actually, in our worldly life, the relationship between teachers and students is also like this. No matter how good the teacher is, at a certain point, if the student themselves are not working hard at all, the teacher has no way. Many teachers feel especially regretful, including in America. In the world's most first-rate schools, some teachers say very sadly, "Alas, my student, my doctoral student, went close to graduation because they really did not work hard. In the end, they left." It is very regrettable. So any teacher, any guru, at a certain point, perhaps if one's own comprehension is too poor or karmic obscurations are too heavy, perhaps no one can do anything. So for those who rely on spiritual guides, you yourself still need to protect your own mind and create these external conditions. This is also very important. You cannot destroy this auspicious connection, otherwise it is unreasonable. Previously, Chan Master Baizhang, it seems Chan Master Da'an asked Chan Master Baizhang, "What is it like to seek the Buddha externally?" Chan Master Baizhang said, "It is like riding an ox and then searching for the ox. It is unreasonable." When you recognize your original mind, what should you do? Chan Master Baizhang said, "When recognizing the nature of the mind, it is like riding the ox home." Finally, he asked, after recognizing it, how should one maintain it? How should one preserve it? How should one protect it? He said, just like a herdsman with his own ox, not letting it damage the crops, at all times managing it with mindfulness, just like this. After we have attained realization and accomplishment, we still need to maintain our mind. Even if you have already awakened through the Guru's teachings, after awakening, you still need to continuously protect it. You cannot think, "Oh, today I realized the mind and saw its nature. I truly recognize the nature of my mind. The nature of the mind is originally luminous and empty. Then after recognizing it today, I immediately leave." It is not like that. As in the biographies of many great masters of the past, after they had some recognition, they still continuously prayed and continuously maintained it. At a certain point, their state of mind had already become stable. At that time, from their own state of realization, the indivisible unity of appearance and emptiness, or the inconceivable state. Even when you emerge from meditation, even in daily life, in walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, you will not depart from luminosity. At the same time, at that time, selfish thoughts are all gone. It is completely a state of spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings. At this time, whether you leave the Guru or leave any Dharma center, you can be completely self-reliant. Before this, it is still very important to maintain your state of mind. So what we also say here is, if you persistently cling to the belief that all liberation depends on, I do not want to practice now, I beg you, when I die, you must definitely, please, you must not let me fall into the 3 lower realms. You must definitely pull me to the Pure Land. Actually, no matter how great the Guru's strength is, they do not necessarily have to pull you to the Pure Land. Pulling you to the Pure Land is not that easy. You yourself also need to make aspirations, and you yourself also need to practice wholesome dharmas. Otherwise, I am afraid there will be some difficulty. Next, we explain why this is so. Why is this? Because within your own mind, there is knowledge and self-awakening. If wrong views and delusions delusion arise with deluded thoughts inverted, even if external spiritual guides give teachings, they cannot save you. If one's own mind has knowledge and self-awakening, one should be able to attain liberation. If one's own mind lacks this knowledge, but instead generates wrong conceptual thoughts, delusion, and deluded thoughts that are inverted, even if there are some external spiritual guides with their teachings, they may not necessarily be able to save you. The key is that we must maintain our own mind and recognize the nature of the mind. If true prajna contemplation arises, in a single instant, all deluded thoughts will be extinguished. If you recognize your own nature, with one awakening, you immediately arrive at Buddhahood. If we truly, through the lineage, Guru's teachings, contemplate the prajna of our own mind, which is the nature of the mind, this is a very subtle kind of condition. When you truly have realization, just as explained in the koans and biographies of the great masters of Chan and Tantric traditions, when you look back inward at the mind in a very short time, just like in a room dark for 1,000 years, when a lamp is lit, instantly, all the darkness is completely dispelled without remainder. All the wrong thoughts and conceptual thoughts in our mind, all of them instantly vanish. Sudden awakening. Actually, this is something that, if we say it is simple, it is indeed very simple. When the guru with karmic connection meets with one's own accumulated merit, through a teaching one awakens instantly, or you yourself rely on a dharma text. Looking at the biographies of great masters of the past, some people, reading a dharma text, instantly recognize the nature of their own mind. For some, when your guru teaches this pith instruction that enables you to look back inward at the mind. Oh, originally I have been drifting in the world since beginningless time for such a long time. When I recognize the nature of mind at this moment, wow, so this is how it is, how pitiful all sentient beings are. At that time, completely, all deluded thoughts and conceptual thoughts are all extinguished. When recognizing the nature of one's own mind with one awakening, you immediately arrive at Buddhahood. Here it also explains that when one awakens, one can reach from the first to the second bhumi, up to the 10th bhumi, and even the stage of Buddhahood. Different realizations can come in succession and manifest. So regarding this matter, some say that Tibetan Buddhism teaches attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime, but Han Buddhism does not. Actually, what is explained here is that when one awakens, even the realization of Buddhahood can also appear. If there is awakening, will one become like Shakyamuni Buddha? Actually, this state of Buddhahood can appear. But the Buddha's emanations can also manifest in different worlds. Therefore, in this Saha world, are there those who can reach the stage of no more learning? There are also many. This can be acknowledged in the teachings of great masters of the past. In Han Buddhism, for some, for example, regarding those who are awakened, it is not clearly stated, for instance, which bhumi the fifth patriarch is at, whether he is a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. Such evaluations and analyses are not given, but perhaps this is also not necessary. He has already completely transcended samsara. He is already no longer an ordinary sentient being, he has already become a noble being. As for the realization of noble beings, for us ordinary people to measure it, we also do not have this qualification. For us as ordinary people today to observe what realization the fifth patriarch truly has, what realization Shantideva truly has, perhaps we temporarily do not need to. We ourselves have not even graduated from elementary school. For us to measure the teacher's credentials, perhaps we temporarily do not need this. Therefore, here we must definitely know. Know what? What is most fundamental for us? Relying on a spiritual guide, relying on supreme pith instructions, relying on one's own supreme conditions for studying Buddhism, frequently observe the mind inwardly. This is very important. When you observe the mind inwardly, some may, as explained in Mipham Rinpoche's teachings, more or less similarly recognize the nature of the mind. Some truly recognize the nature of the mind. But in any case, just as the weather in spring will not be extremely cold, the weather in spring in our Tibetan areas will not be extremely cold. When you truly recognize the nature of the mind, originally you were especially afraid of the thieves of afflictions like attachment, aversion, and delusion. In the end, although these afflictive conceptual thoughts will appear, generally speaking, they can neither benefit nor harm you. At a certain point, just as explained in the tantric teachings, in an empty room with nothing, even if thieves enter, there will be no worry at all. Eventually, in your state of realization, there will frequently be some conceptual thoughts, there will be some unexamined attachment, aversion, and delusion, but actually your accumulation of merit cannot be stolen. At that time, many of your experiences, including during sleep and dreams, and in daily life during the daytime, will also appear. Of course, sometimes in our practice, it seems we feel that a certain experience really cannot manifest. There is also a kind of distress and sadness, but this is also not necessary, because practice is not a matter of 1 or 2 days. For the great masters of the past, it was many lifetimes. As in the biographies of Sakya Pandita and Shantideva, 500 lifetimes. How many lifetimes becoming a Pandita, but still not having realized the nature of the mind. If even in manifest appearances there is such explanation, I think that in our brief few years, some people say, I have studied and contemplated for 10 years, I have studied and contemplated for 20 years, I have studied and contemplated for 30 years, I still have not awakened. What should I do? Crying is not necessary. I think if I do not awaken in this lifetime, then next lifetime. If I do not awaken in the next lifetime, we are not materialists. For materialists, there is only this one life. But we should acknowledge life after life. Some say there is no time, hurry, 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 quickly awaken. But this awakening is also not something where you want to awaken and immediately pop like a bubble. It is not immediately pop awakened. The more anxious you are, perhaps the less it works. We should use a method. But if we understand this inevitable pattern, frequently pray to the Guru and the 3 jewels, and at the same time adopt and abandon causes and effects, then you yourself also continuously persevere. Sometimes we feel our perseverance is not very diligent for 2 or 3 days, then after a while especially lazy again. Some people truly do not have a stable mind. I think the greatest difficulty for practitioners nowadays is not having a stable and constant mind. This is the greatest condition for unsuccessful practice. If you have a long-term spirit of consistency, year after year, sooner or later you will make progress. Eventually, I think we will have some awakening. Moreover, encountering such a Dharma teaching for each person should be worthy of rejoicing. We will stop here for today.
Jirgana jirano chupai, chupun tunen droa droa bandrangara badna sodargye. Bandrangara badna sodargye. Bandrangara badna sodargye.